Good evening. I have read your reflection exercises and completed a review of your practicum logs, and have spent quite a bit of time today really thinking about the work that you have submitted related to your reflective exercise when we looked at O'Brien's sub-themes of servant leadership. I'm going to read three excerpts to you and kind of connect some ideas. The poem, The New Colossus, it's written by Emma Lazarus. This poem, in part, is on the Statue of Liberty. These words may sound familiar. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. The author of this poem, I believe it was Thoreau. No, actually it's Longfellow. It's Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. In this excerpt, it's Santa Filomena. Thoreau wrote, "Lo, in the house of misery, a lady with a lamp I see, pass through the glimmering gloom and flit from room to room, and slow as in a dream of bliss, the speechless suffer turn to kiss her shadow as it falls upon the darkening walls." And the last thing, probably our favorite author, and certainly the one that we should be very attentive to, is from our Bible. It's in Matthew 25, verse 40. And it says, "And the king will answer them, Truly, I say to you, as you did in it to one of the least of my brothers, you did it to me." In reading your reflective exercises, each of you gave me multiple examples of how your work as professional nurses and professional nurse leaders exemplified what it meant to be a servant leader. So I spent the day probably reading about 40 or 45 examples from your writing about what it meant to serve others. Much like the poem, when we think about Lady Liberty sitting in the harbor, waiting to greet and to welcome and to serve, representing the United States, the people that were thrown out. They were discarded from their other countries. Some leaving their countries under stress and duress came looking to the United States for safety. When we look at what Longfellow wrote about the Florence Nightingale, who is, our lady with the lamp, the beautiful imagery of her walking through the sick hallways of dying soldiers, and that their perspective was that her simple presence, just the knowing that her lamp was coming through the doorway, brought them peace. And then we think of the Holy Bible, and it reminds us that whatever we do to mankind, we do to God, and He views it as our way of serving Him when we serve others. All of your examples exemplified what it meant to serve the least of these. None of you wrote about providing servant leadership to people that were nice or friendly, or in good spirits, or not in duress. All of you wrote about the sickest of the sick, the people who were at their lowest, the folks that were grieving. Some beautiful stories about just being fully present when an elderly person just needed someone to hold their hand, or a dying HIV patient just desperately wanting to go home. The idea of a mother losing their child and a nurse being fully present just to hear them tell the story of that child's very brief life, or sharing the grief in an early loss of pregnancy at an early gestational period. All of those things were extremely touching. You talked about the elderly. You talked about the unborn. You talked about the vulnerable babies. You talked about HIV patients. You talked about prisoners. All of the things that God calls us to serve, He expects us to go outside our comfort zone and to go out into not just our comfortable communities, but the communities that maybe make us a little uncomfortable. Your words in your reflective exercise truly reflect professionals that are making every effort to be the hands and feet of Christ. I hope as you worked through that exercise that you took a few moments and thought, wow, I've done some really good things. Or that you reflected on those moments, even if it made you sad to think about them, that you felt a sense of pride and humility that in that moment you changed a life. I really try to be very thoughtful when I read these. I also get a little emotional when I read them. Sometimes it really touches me in a different way. I also get to know you all a little bit. It's kind of hard because I don't have faces with names. But for me, it's really good to be able to put all that together. And I'm grateful for your transparency and sharing that information. Um, Next week, you're going to be doing your discussion board. It's pretty straightforward. You've got two parts. Part of it is about advocacy, and the second part is talking about the 5 phases of will. And that's a little tricky concept, so I do want to make sure you take the time to read your textbook and fully understand that concept before you try to manage your discussion board. We're wrapping up the course. You're going to be sent links from Typhon to do your evaluations for your self-evaluation and your site evaluation. Your preceptor has been been sent the link to do your evaluation, and all of that will be filtered into Typhon, so you don't have any paper evaluations to do, but do be attentive to getting those taken care of in Typhon. They have to be done before the end of the course for you to have a grade posted without an incomplete. And this is a prerequisite to 625, so you won't be able to start 625 if this course hasn't been properly wrapped up. So make sure you're attentive to those deadlines. Go back in and read your practicum log feedback. Make sure that if you have questions or there were errors or things you need to tweak, just take care of those things and send me an email and say, hey, Dr. Hudgens, I've taken care of those. It has been my pleasure to read your work this week. I truly appreciate the efforts there. Know that I'm here. I know you're wrapping it up and you're probably lifting your eyes looking forward to 625, but try to stay dialed in for just one more week. Let me know if I can do anything for you in the remaining part of the course. You guys have a blessed evening. Take care.